At the local pool, three privileged teens thought they could break Marcus with a brutal, racially charged attack, dunking him underwater and laughing as he fought for air. What they didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just a victim. He was a martial arts prodigy with a legacy of discipline and strength. This is a story about injustice, resilience, and the fight to reclaim truth. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe, because the truth behind this fight is one you won't want to miss. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Marcus Reed stepped out of his mother's old sedan, the late afternoon sun beating down on the cracked asphalt of the Westvale Community Pool parking lot. The buzz of cicadas filled the air, merging with distant shouts and laughter that drifted from the fenced-in pool area. It should have been a normal summer day, like the ones he'd known back home before moving here, a time to relax, maybe even forget how cramped the new apartment felt, or how Lorraine, his mother, tried so hard to hide the worry in her eyes. He adjusted the strap of his battered gym bag on his shoulder and forced himself to take a deep breath. He wanted to belong here. He wanted this to be a new start. As he walked toward the gate, he caught sight of families lounging under bright umbrellas, the glint of sun on the water, lifeguards perched on tall chairs. It looked like a postcard of small-town summer life. Except he could already feel the difference. The quick, measuring glances from the front desk clerk who scanned his membership card twice. The hushed conversation behind him that stopped the moment he turned around. Marcus was used to it. He'd heard his grandfather's voice 1,000 times in his head, steady and calm. Control your emotions, or they'll control you. He nodded to the clerk with a polite thank you, and kept moving. But that quiet tension shifted as soon as he neared the chain-link entrance to the pool itself. Carter Bishop was leaning against the fence, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. Owen Myers lounged next to him, fidgeting with a cheap pair of aviator sunglasses, and Lucas Shaw stood with his thumbs hooked in his swim trunks, watching Marcus with a look that wasn't even trying to hide the amusement. Carter straightened up when he saw Marcus approach. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," he called in an overly friendly tone that somehow made the word sting. Marcus stopped a few feet away, gripping the strap of his bag tighter. "Hey," he said evenly. He didn't want trouble. He just wanted to swim. Carter let out a short, dry laugh and pushed off the fence to step directly into Marcus's path. He was taller by an inch or two, broad-shouldered. Blonde hair gelled back in the signature style he'd clearly practiced in the mirror. He looked like a stock photo for all American teen, except the cruelty behind his grin wasn't in any marketing campaign. "Tell me something, Marcus," Carter said, leaning in so close that Marcus could smell the chlorine already clinging to his skin. "You sure you know how to swim? I mean, did you even grow up with a pool in your neighborhood?" Owen snickered. Lucas snorted and muttered, "Doubt it," just loud enough for Marcus to hear. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes steady. "I'm just here to swim like everyone else," he said. Carter's grin widened. "Oh, just here to swim, huh?" He turned, theatrically looking back at Owen and Lucas. "Hear that, boys? He thinks it's that simple." Marcus tried to step around him. Carter blocked him easily, sidestepping like they were sparring on a mat. Except Marcus wasn't going to fight here. Not unless he absolutely had to. Lucas spoke up next. "Let's see that membership card. Pretty sure this place doesn't take charity cases." Marcus felt the heat rise in his neck. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Lucas lunged forward and snatched the card from his hand. Marcus reflexively grabbed for it, but Lucas yanked it away, waving it above Marcus's head like he was teasing a little kid. "Give it back," Marcus said, voice low even. Lucas clicked his tongue mockingly. Listen to him. So polite. He flicked the card toward Carter, who caught it with one hand. Carter examined the plastic membership, tilting it in the sun as though searching for flaws. "Looks fake to me. What do you think, Owen?" Owen peered over Carter's shoulder. "Oh yeah, total fake. I mean, they're handing these out at the shelter now, right?" Marcus felt something deep in his chest tighten. He clenched his fists but forced himself to release them slowly. Carter's eyes met his, challenging him. Then, in one quick, deliberate move, Carter ripped the card in half. Marcus's breath caught. The card fluttered to the ground in 2 torn pieces. "There," Carter said brightly, brushing his hands off like he'd completed a chore. Problem solved. Marcus's heart was pounding. He looked at the shredded membership on the ground. All he could see was his mom's tired smile when she'd handed it to him last week. "I saved up for this, baby. Go have fun, okay?" Lucas let out an exaggerated sigh. "What's wrong? Don't want to swim anymore." Marcus bent down and picked up the torn halves. He didn't respond. Around them, the energy of the entrance had shifted. A couple of parents ushered their kids away quickly, pretending not to see anything. The teenage cashier at the front desk stared but didn't say a word. It was silent in a way that made the humiliation louder. Owen elbowed Carter. "Hey, man, let him go. He's probably got better places to be. Like, anywhere that's not here." Carter gave Marcus one last, slow up and down look. "Actually, you're right." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper only Marcus could hear. "Why don't you do us all a favor and don't come back?" Marcus didn't answer. He just kept breathing. He didn't let them see the way his fingers trembled as he tucked the torn card into his bag. Carter clapped him on the shoulder hard enough to make him stagger a step. "Good talk," he said cheerfully. Then he turned away, whistling, and led Owen and Lucas inside. Marcus stood there for a long moment, watching them go. He could still hear the splash of the pool, the laughter of the other kids who didn't have to deal with this, who didn't even see it, or worse, who saw it and didn't care. He swallowed hard. He wasn't going to cry. Not here. He turned around slowly and walked back toward the parking lot. He could feel every pair of eyes on him, some watching with sympathy they wouldn't voice, others pretending they hadn't seen anything at all. But Marcus kept walking, because that's what he always did. Marcus didn't sleep much that night. He lay awake in the narrow bed of their cramped apartment, listening to the old AC unit rattle in the window, while his mother snored quietly in the next room, exhausted from yet another double shift at the diner. He couldn't tell her what had happened at the pool. She would have been furious, devastated even, knowing the sacrifices she made just to pay for that membership. So he stayed silent, replaying the scene over and over in his head, the way Carter had ripped his card in two, the laughter, the look on Lucas's face like he was playing with some broken toy. The next morning Marcus tried to shake it off. He told himself it was just one confrontation, that he'd seen worse back in the city. But Westvale felt different. It was smaller, more suffocating. Everybody seemed to know everybody else's business, and he could already sense the whispers following him like a shadow. At school, the rumors started subtle. A couple of kids he barely knew giving him sidelong glances in the hall. One girl covering her locker combination with her hand when he walked by. He heard Owen's name in hushed conversations, picked up on his smirk when their eyes met. Owen had always been the talker of Carter's group, the one who liked to hold court at the lunch table with his dumb impressions and cruel jokes. It didn't take long before Marcus heard the first real lie spoken out loud. He got expelled from his last school, someone whispered in the cafeteria line, for fighting. Put a kid in the hospital. Marcus froze with his tray in his hands. He didn't bother turning around to see who said it. He already knew the story was Owen's work. Owen loved details. He'd have practiced the lie until it sounded real. Marcus sat alone that day, pushing his food around his plate as he listened to the shifting tone of the room. People didn't challenge the rumor. They just accepted it, because it fit with what they wanted to see. The quiet black kid with the guarded expression and broad shoulders who always seemed to be watching the exits. They didn't know about the mornings he spent doing forms in the living room because they couldn't afford a gym membership in the city. They didn't know about his grandfather teaching him not to start fights, only to finish them. They didn't want to know. After school, Marcus walked home alone, his bag bouncing heavily against his side. He tried texting a couple kids he'd hung out with the first week of summer. No one answered. One even left him on read. At dinner, Lorraine asked about his day, but he just nodded, shoveling in food without tasting it. "Fine," he mumbled. She gave him a long look, but didn't push. The next day at the pool felt even worse. Marcus had debated not going back at all, But something stubborn in him refused to let Carter and his cronies win. He'd paid for this membership. Well, Lorraine had, and he deserved to use it. So he showed up in his Navy swim trunks, head high, determined to ignore them. The staff barely made eye contact when he signed in. He tried to tell himself that was normal, that he was imagining the hesitation before they waved him through. But when he stepped out onto the concrete pool deck, he felt it like a physical shove. Conversations died down. People watched him walk. He spread out his towel at a corner chair, refusing to cower, but the laughter seemed forced and too loud all around him, like everyone was trying too hard to act normal. Then came the next part of Carter's plan. Marcus noticed it first with the little kids. Some of them he'd splashed around with on his first visit. They used to be fearless, tossing beach balls, shrieking with delight. Now they hesitated when he got close, glancing back at their parents for approval before retreating. He tried to smile at them, but it fell flat. Their eyes were wide with something between confusion and fear. He didn't see Carter at first. He thought maybe they hadn't shown up. He almost let out a relieved breath. But then he spotted them near the snack bar, lounging like they owned the place. Carter held court, arms slung over the back of a plastic chair, sunglasses perched arrogantly on his head. Owen leaned in, laughing too hard at whatever joke was being told. Lucas scanned the crowd with that predator's gaze. And when Marcus locked eyes with them, Carter's grin split wide, mocking. That's when Marcus noticed the kids whispering among themselves, pointing at him, laughing. Not the same innocent laughter as before. This was different, meaner, scripted. It didn't take a genius to see what was happening. Carter had paid them off somehow, pocket money for candy, for snacks, for loyalty. Little voices piping up with lines they'd clearly been coached to say. Don't play with him. My mom says he's violent. I heard he hurt someone real bad. Betty steals. Marcus heard it all as he sat there, gripping the arms of his plastic chair until his knuckles turned white. He tried to get up and leave, but forced himself to stay. He wouldn't run. Not yet. The pool staff avoided his eyes when he asked for a new membership card to replace the one Carter destroyed. We'll have to talk to management, they said, without writing anything down. Meanwhile, Carter kept glancing over, that grin never slipping, like he was daring Marcus to start something. Owen pantomimed a punch behind Carter's back, making Lucas double over laughing. They were putting on a show for everyone. It worked. Parents pulled their kids away from Marcus's section of the pool. Whole families packed up early rather than sit near him. Even a lifeguard, a teenage boy who'd been friendly that first week, now shifted his chair further away. Marcus sat there for hours. He didn't get in the water. He didn't move. He just sat, the summer sun baking his skin, the whispers crawling over him like ants. When Lorraine picked him up later, she noticed how quiet he was. Bad day, she asked softly. Marcus nodded, but didn't elaborate. She didn't push. That night he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of cars on the highway and the tick of the old clock in the kitchen. He clenched and unclenched his fist slowly, trying to breathe the way his grandfather taught him. In, out, stay calm. Don't let them see you break. But when he closed his eyes, all he saw was Carter's smirk and Owen's lies swirling like poison through the air. He knew tomorrow would be worse. Marcus woke up to the sound of muffled sobbing. For a moment he thought he was still dreaming. The night had been restless, full of twisted images of the pool, Owen's sneer, Carter's mocking laughter. He blinked blearily in the gray dawn light filtering through his blinds, trying to orient himself. The sobbing continued, quiet but raw. It came from the living room. He swung his feet over the edge of the bed and patted out softly. Lorraine was on her knees just inside the front door, her body shaking. Marcus's heart thumped painfully. "Mom," he croaked, voice still hoarse with sleep. She didn't turn around right away. When she did, her face was blotchy, tears streaking down her cheeks. She pointed a trembling hand through the open doorway. Marcus pushed past her gently and stepped onto the tiny concrete stoop in front of their rental. The sight punched the breath from his lungs. Spray painted in thick, dripping red letters across their small, white garage door was a single word: leave. The letters were nearly a foot tall, angry and uneven, the paint still wet enough to glisten in the weak morning light. The ground was littered with empty aerosol cans someone hadn't even bothered to pick up. Marcus felt his blood run cold. For a long moment he couldn't move, couldn't speak. He heard Lorraine behind him, sobbing harder now, and finally he turned back to her. She was clutching her robe tight around herself, rocking a little where she knelt. "Why?" she whispered brokenly. "Why would they do this to us?" Marcus's fists clenched. He didn't have an answer. He wanted to scream, to hit something, but he forced himself to take a shuddering breath. "Control your emotions." His grandfather's voice echoed in his head, cruelly calm in this moment. But Marcus couldn't. He felt hot tears sting his eyes. He knelt next to Lorraine and pulled her close. They stayed like that on the cold stoop for what felt like forever, the word leave looming over them like a curse. Eventually, he helped her inside. She refused to let go of his hand, clinging like he was the only thing keeping her from falling apart completely. He sat her on the old second-hand couch and went to get a damp rag and cleaner, but when he returned to the door, he just stood there. The letters hadn't faded. If anything, they seemed to scream louder in the daylight. He didn't even know where to start. The paint was oil-based, thick, meant to be hard to scrub away. It was a message, meant to last. He tried anyway. His arms burned from the effort. He felt the rag tear. He replaced it with another. Lorraine watched him from the window, her face stricken. Eventually, she came out to help, wordless. Neighbors peeked through curtains, but no one came over. No one offered help. No one called the police, because they all knew who did it, or at least why it was done, and they were too afraid or too complicit to care. When they finally gave up, exhausted and still red-eyed, the letters remained faintly visible under the smears and streaks of cleaner. "Leave." Marcus didn't even want to look at it anymore. He turned away, chest heaving. Lorraine went inside without a word and closed the door gently behind her. A few hours later, a police cruiser pulled up. Marcus had just sat down at the tiny kitchen table, head in his hands. Lorraine was trying to drink coffee, but her hands were shaking too badly. The knock on the door made them both flinch. Marcus shot to his feet. Lorraine wiped at her face quickly, trying to look composed. She opened the door to find Chief William Bishop standing there in uniform, his wide-brimmed hat tucked respectfully under his arm. He looked every bit the model of small-town authority, down to the silver badge that caught the morning light. Lorraine stiffened. "Chief," she said flatly. Bishop put on what might have passed for a sympathetic expression if Marcus hadn't already seen his sons smirk 100 times. "Mrs. Reed, Marcus," he greeted, voice low and calm. "Mind if I come in?" Lorraine hesitated, but stepped aside. Marcus stayed standing, arms crossed, glaring. Bishop stepped in, nodding politely, as if he hadn't seen the vandalism on the garage, as if he hadn't driven right past the bright red letters. He settled into one of their wobbly kitchen chairs, hat resting on his knee. He didn't touch the coffee Lorraine offered. "I heard about the incident," he began slowly. "Truly sorry you folks had to wake up to that. It's unacceptable. We don't condone that here in Westvale." Marcus nearly laughed. The words sounded so rehearsed, so empty. Lorraine's voice cracked. "We know who did it." Bishop lifted an eyebrow. "Oh, your son and his friends," she said, voice shaking. "Don't pretend you don't know. They've been harassing Marcus for weeks." Bishop let out a slow sigh, as if this were a delicate matter he hated to handle. "Mrs. Reed, I understand you're upset, but do you have any proof of that? Any witnesses?" Lorraine blinked. Marcus felt like he was going to punch a hole in the wall. "It's his handwriting," Marcus growled. "We know it." Bishop's gaze slid to him, patient, almost patronizing. "That's not evidence, son. I can't charge someone over a hunch." Lorraine's shoulders slumped. Bishop clicked his tongue sympathetically. "Look, I know this is hard, but if you didn't see who did it and there's no video, there's not much I can do. Maybe it was some kids from out of town. Graffiti's been on the rise lately." Marcus barked a humorless laugh. "Yeah? On whose houses?" Bishop ignored that. "We'll file a report," he said, standing smoothly. "But I wouldn't expect much. These things are hard to follow up on." No one wants to talk. Lorraine swallowed, voice small. So that's it? They get away with it. Bishop gave her a gentle, pitying smile. I'm sorry, truly, but I have to follow the law. Marcus wanted to scream. He felt the words burning in his throat. You are the law. But he stayed silent, jaw tight. Bishop turned to leave, but paused at the door. If I were you, he added quietly, almost kindly, I'd think real hard about whether this town is the right place for your family. He tipped his hat. Good day, ma'am. Son. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence filled the tiny kitchen, thick and choking. Lorraine lowered herself onto a chair and began to cry again, her shoulders shaking. Marcus stood there trembling, hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles went white, staring at the door as if he could burn a hole through it with sheer rage, the word leave still faintly visible on the garage beyond the window. Marcus spent the next few days moving through town like a ghost. Everywhere he went, the word leave seemed burned onto people's faces even if they didn't say it out loud. The half-scrubbed letters on their garage still stained the door like dried blood. Lorraine tried to hide her fear behind forced optimism, making him breakfast she didn't eat, talking about jobs she hadn't heard back from. He pretended to believe her, but the silence between them at night spoke the truth. He avoided the pool, but eventually he forced himself back. He wouldn't give Carter the satisfaction of seeing him run. That day was oppressively hot. The pool deck was littered with kids screaming and splashing, parents sweating under umbrellas, lifeguards blowing their whistles. Marcus paid at the gate, ignoring the front desk girl's stiff smile, and walked in with his towel over his shoulder. Carter, Owen, and Lucas were already there, lounging near the deep end like they owned the place. Carter had sunglasses perched on his forehead and a bandage on his knuckle from a fight Marcus knew he'd bragged about at school. Owen noticed Marcus first, elbowing Carter and murmuring something that made them both laugh. Marcus ignored them, trying to focus on the cool promise of the water. He set his stuff down carefully, removing his shirt and revealing the wiry muscle he'd built over years of disciplined training with his grandfather. He heard someone snicker at that. He tuned it out, but Carter didn't let it go. He strolled over, radiating mock friendliness, and clapped Marcus hard on the shoulder. Hey there, champ, he said. You sure you're allowed back in after what you pulled? Marcus didn't react. He just stared, unblinking. Carter dropped the fake smile. You're not welcome here, he said quietly. Owen and Lucas flanked him. The three of them surrounded Marcus near the pool's edge. A lifeguard glanced over but quickly looked away. I paid to be here, Marcus replied evenly. Same as you. Carter leaned in, voice venomous. You think money makes you one of us? Owen snickered. Lucas cracked his knuckles. Marcus took a careful step back, not wanting to get boxed in against the water. But Carter was quick. He shoved Marcus hard, making him stumble at the edge. Marcus managed to keep his footing, muscles coiling, breath hissing through his teeth. Owen's eyes lit up at the tension. Oh, look at him. He's gonna snap. Bet he's gonna go all thug on us. Carter grinned. That what you want to do, Marcus? Hit me. For a moment, Marcus actually considered it. He saw Lorraine's exhausted face flash through his mind. He forced his hands to unclench. But Carter pushed him again, this time sending him splashing into the pool. Water rushed over his head, chlorine burning his eyes. He kicked to the surface, only to be met with laughter from the three of them. When he tried to haul himself out, Lucas shoved him back down. Marcus came up sputtering, coughing. He could hear Owen taunting him from above. How's that membership working out for you? Marcus's chest burned with rage. He remembered every lesson his grandfather ever taught him. Don't start the fight. But if it comes to you, end it. When Lucas reached to push him down again, Marcus moved. Fast. He caught Lucas's wrist and twisted hard, sending the boy yelping into the water. Owen tried to kick him, but Marcus blocked, shoving him back with a hard push. Carter lunged with a wild swing that Marcus dodged, using his opponent's momentum to spin him off balance. In the chaos, Marcus's training took over. He didn't beat them senseless. He didn't want to. He just made them stop. By the time the lifeguards blew their whistles and dragged them apart, Carter's lip was split, Lucas was nursing his wrist, and Owen was spitting water. Marcus stood at the pool's edge, breathing hard but under control. He glared at them. "Stay away from me," he said, voice cold as ice. But that wasn't the end of it. Not even close. He knew it when he saw Carter's eyes narrow with hatred. When Marcus left the pool that day, the staff refused to make eye contact. No one asked for his side of the story. He walked home, dripping wet, towel over his shoulder, heart still pounding with adrenaline and dread. That night it started. The video. He didn't know who shot it, some kid or maybe Owen himself, but it spread like wildfire through town. A grainy, shakily shot clip that started halfway through the fight, showing only Marcus's hard shoves and blocks, Carter's split lip, Lucas cradling his wrist. It didn't show the first shove. It didn't show the dunking. It didn't show the laughter. Just Marcus's face, grim and cold and angry, eyes flashing in the glare of the pool lights. The caption read, "Violent thug attacks locals at Westvale pool." Comments poured in. "Disgusting. They need to kick him out of town. Where's his family even from?" Lorraine saw it the next morning. She clutched her phone so hard her knuckles turned white. She didn't speak. She just handed it to Marcus, hand shaking. He read the words, felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. He wanted to scream, but couldn't find breath. By afternoon, people avoided him on the street. Kids he knew wouldn't look him in the eye. Parents crossed to the other side with their children in tow. At the grocery store, the cashier barely spoke. The clerk at the pool canceled his membership for safety reasons. Marcus stayed silent. He felt like if he opened his mouth, he might burn the whole town down with what he'd say. But the worst came that night. He and Lorraine had tried to watch TV together, forcing themselves to pretend it was normal. She made popcorn neither of them ate. When the knock came at nearly midnight, it startled them both. Lorraine jumped. Marcus went to the door, cautious. Two uniformed officers stood on their porch, bathed in the sickly glow of the single street lamp. One of them had a clipboard. The other rested his hand meaningfully on his holster. "Marcus Reed," the first one asked, voice bored. Marcus swallowed. "Yeah." Lorraine appeared behind him, voice trembling. "Officers? What is this?" The first cop didn't even look at her. "We have a summons for juvenile court. Assault and battery." He held it out. Lorraine's hand shot up to cover her mouth. Marcus felt numb as he took it. The words on the paper blurred. The second officer cleared his throat. "You'll need to appear next Tuesday. Don't miss it, or we'll come back with a warrant." Lorraine let out a strangled sob and sank to her knees on the floor. Marcus stood frozen, paper crumpling in his shaking hand. The officers turned and left without another word, boots heavy on the porch. He could hear their car doors slam, the engine cough to life, the red and blue strobes fading into the dark street. He didn't move to help Lorraine right away. He couldn't. He felt hollow, carved out. His mother's sobs filled the room, echoing off the peeling walls. The taste of salt and humiliation thick in the air as Marcus finally fell to his knees beside her. The summons slipping from his fingers onto the worn linoleum floor, cold and merciless beneath them. Marcus sat at the kitchen table staring at the court summons that now had coffee rings and crumpled edges from how many times he'd picked it up only to set it down again. Lorraine moved around the kitchen like a ghost, eyes swollen from crying the night before, her voice cracking every time she tried to speak. They didn't have the money for a lawyer. She said she'd ask around at work for advice, but Marcus could tell she was lying to herself, trying to keep from falling apart. The town had turned on them so quickly, it made Marcus's head spin. It felt like just yesterday he'd walked into the Westvale community pool, hoping for a new start. Now people crossed the street to avoid them. He didn't want to go to school, but Lorraine insisted. "You need to graduate," she said, voice trembling but firm. So Marcus walked the cracked sidewalks alone, bag slung over one shoulder, feeling every eye on him. At school it was worse. The moment he entered the hallway, a hush fell. Conversations died. Lockers clanged shut a little too hard. He kept his head down, but he could hear the whispers. "That's him. The one from the video. They say he attacked 3 kids for no reason." He turned into his homeroom, and the teacher went silent mid-sentence, eyes flicking to the door. She gave him a brittle smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marcus took his seat in the back, trying to ignore how the kids around him shifted their desks subtly away. But the real nightmare started when Owen Myers, of all people, decided to help. A week after the police came to their house, the school announced a safety assembly in the gym. They called it a community dialogue to make it sound friendly, but Marcus knew better the moment he heard Owen's voice on the mic. He was standing at the center of the basketball court, flanked by Principal Harris and two guidance counselors who looked profoundly uncomfortable. Owen wore a solemn expression, his eyes downcast with practiced humility. "We just want everyone to feel safe," he said into the mic, voice steady and sincere. "After what happened at the pool, a lot of us have been scared. We didn't know Marcus could be so violent." The words hit Marcus like a punch. He felt dozens of eyes turn to him in the bleachers. He didn't move. He kept his face neutral, even as his pulse roared in his ears. Owen continued, tone dripping false compassion. "We're not saying he's a bad person," he lied, "but we have to acknowledge there's a threat here. I mean, if someone could snap like that, how do we know it won't happen again? We need to be vigilant." A few kids actually nodded. One girl covered her mouth with her hand. Marcus's vision tunneled. He felt his breath coming too fast, too shallow. He forced himself to count. In, out. Don't give them what they want. Don't prove them right. The principal didn't stop Owen. Instead, he gave a short speech about keeping our school safe and reporting concerning behavior. No one mentioned Carter or Lucas. No one said a word about who really started it. Marcus sat frozen, back rigid, staring at the gym floor. When the bell finally rang, he stood slowly, careful not to shove past anyone. The crowd parted for him like he was radioactive. Kids he'd known for months wouldn't meet his eyes. Even the teachers avoided him, speaking to him only when they had to, voices tight and polite. It didn't stop there. Carter Bishop decided he wanted the last word. A day after the assembly, the local newspaper ran a front-page story. Above the fold was a picture of Chief William Bishop in uniform, his hand on Carter's shoulder, both of them looking somber. The headline read, "Community Concern Over Violence at Local Pool." The article quoted Chief Bishop at length about escalating tensions and the need to protect our youth from outside influences. He never mentioned Marcus by name, but he didn't have to. Everyone knew. Then there was Carter himself. The reporter called him the victim of a shocking attack and printed his words in bold type. "I just want our town to be safe. I don't want anyone else to get hurt. We shouldn't have to live in fear." Carter's expression in the photo was perfect. Wounded, serious, just the right hint of fear in his eyes. Marcus felt sick reading it. Lorraine wouldn't even finish the article. She threw it in the trash, hands shaking. But that didn't stop the copies from showing up everywhere. The diner Lorraine worked at had one on the counter. The grocery store posted it on the community board. Even the library had a copy neatly folded on the reading table. Marcus stopped going out unless he absolutely had to. When he did, the looks were worse than ever. Strangers whispered as he passed. Mothers pulled their children closer. Once at the gas station, a man muttered "thug" under his breath loud enough for Marcus to hear. Marcus didn't respond. He paid for the gas and left, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles went white. At school, the divide was clear. A few kids tried to say hi at first, but after the assembly, they stopped. They didn't want the stigma of being seen with him. Teachers gave him forced smiles, but their eyes darted away. Even the principal wouldn't look him in the eye in the hallway. Marcus noticed a new flyer on the bulletin board near the office. "Safe School Zone. Report suspicious behavior." It had a number at the bottom. He knew exactly who they wanted people to call about. Lorraine tried to help. She made his favorite dinner one night, even though she was dead on her feet from working 2 jobs. She smiled and asked about school like nothing was wrong. Marcus answered in monosyllables. He couldn't bring himself to tell her how bad it was, how alone he felt, how every time he closed his eyes, he saw Carter's smug face on the front page, Chief Bishop's hand on his shoulder like they were heroes. The worst was knowing it worked. The town had bought the lie completely. Marcus wasn't just alone. He was radioactive, dangerous. He'd gone from invisible new kid to public enemy in 2 weeks flat. And the people who did it didn't even have to hide. They had the principal, the newspaper, the cops, the whole system backing them up. Marcus lay awake at night listening to his mother cry quietly in the next room, her sobs muffled by a pillow she thought would keep him from hearing. His own eyes burning with rage he couldn't afford to show. His fists clenched so tightly they left crescents in his palms. The words of his grandfather ringing hollow in his ears because control felt impossible when the whole world seemed to want him gone. The walls of their tiny apartment pressing in like a cell, the town outside sharpening its knives and telling itself it was only for its own safety. Marcus sat on the edge of his mattress, elbows on his knees, phone glowing in his hands as the latest notification buzzed through the silence of their tiny apartment. Lorraine had fallen asleep on the couch after working another long shift, an arm draped over her eyes as if she couldn't bear to see the world anymore. Marcus stared at the screen until the letters blurred. The text was simple, brutal. Get out or bleed. He read it again, feeling his pulse spike with something dark and ugly. No name, no number he recognized, just black letters on white. He exhaled shakily, the breath catching in his throat. It wasn't the first threat he'd gotten. After the video spread, his DMs had filled with insults, slurs, demands that he leave town. But this was different. Short, specific, violent. He stood suddenly, the old mattress creaking beneath him, and paced the cramped room. He could feel the floor vibrating under his steps, feel the ragged scrape of the carpet on his bare feet. The threat rang in his ears like a dare. He imagined Carter typing it out, smirking with that cold amusement, imagining Marcus cowering. He clenched his fists until they shook. A part of him wanted to storm over to Carter's house, pound on the door, drag him out onto the lawn. He wanted to fight, to make him hurt the way he'd hurt them. But Marcus forced himself to stop, squeezing his eyes shut. Control your emotions. His grandfather's mantra felt hollow now, mocking. What good had control done? His mother was breaking under the weight of this town's hate, and he was supposed to just take it? The phone buzzed again in his palm. Another message. Clocks ticking. He deleted it, the screen going black in his hand. He heard a noise and turned to see Lorraine shifting on the couch, mumbling in her sleep, face pinched. Marcus watched her for a long time. Her uniform was still on. She'd come home too tired even to change. She was doing everything she could to keep them afloat, and he couldn't even protect her from graffiti on their door or slurs in the grocery line. He put the phone down carefully on the rickety table and went to the tiny bathroom. He splashed water on his face, gripping the sink so hard it creaked. He didn't recognize himself in the cracked mirror. The rage in his eyes felt like a stranger had moved in behind them. He whispered to himself, voice hoarse, I'm not them. But he didn't sound sure. The next morning, he woke to the smell of burnt toast. Lorraine was trying to make breakfast, pretending everything was normal, scraping blackened bread into the trash with shaking hands. Her hair was pulled back, but wisps stuck to her forehead with sweat. She turned and forced a smile that fell apart the second she saw Marcus watching her. He didn't say anything. He couldn't. She packed her bag with slow, careful movements. I'll be late tonight, she said. Double shift. He nodded. She hesitated by the door. Be safe. Her voice cracked. He watched her go, the door closing with a dull thud that seemed to echo in the silence. He spent the day doing nothing. He didn't go to school. He didn't go outside. He just sat, staring at the walls. When his phone buzzed again, he ignored it. But he read every message eventually, each one worse than the last. We're watching. Thug. Should have drowned you. You're dead if you don't leave. When Lorraine came home that night, she was crying before she even opened the door. Marcus shot to his feet, the hairs on his arms standing up. She dropped her purse on the floor and sank to her knees, covering her face. He rushed over. Mom. She didn't answer. Her shoulders shook with sobs that sounded like they were being torn out of her. He grabbed her arms gently. What happened? She couldn't speak for a long time. When she finally did, The words tumbled out between gasps. "They fired me." Marcus went cold. He felt the world narrow around him. "What? Why?" She shook her head, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. They said they don't want any trouble, that the customers are nervous, that people are talking." Marcus felt his hands ball into fists. He had to force them open. Who told them that? She couldn't answer, but he knew. He could see it like it was written on the wall, in blood. Chief Bishop, or one of his friends. Maybe that lawyer friend of his who golfed with the owner every weekend. Maybe it didn't even take that. Maybe all it took was someone whispering, "That's the family with the violent kid," and the owner deciding it wasn't worth the hassle. He felt sick. Lorraine looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. "I begged them. I told them we needed it. They wouldn't even let me finish my shift. They said I made the customers uncomfortable." She broke down again, shoulders shaking. Marcus couldn't breathe. He sat beside her, pulling her close. He wanted to promise her it would be okay, that they'd get through this. But he couldn't. The words wouldn't come. He just held her while she cried. He felt the rage bubbling up in his chest like acid. It burned. It hurt. He wanted to hurt them back. He wanted to go to that diner and break every window. He wanted to find Carter and Owen and Lucas and beat them until they bled. He wanted to storm the police station and scream in Bishop's smug face, "Control your emotions." The mantra was a joke now. He felt like he was drowning in his own fury. When Lorraine finally fell asleep on the couch again, Marcus sat in the dark, the only sound her soft, uneven breathing and the buzz of a streetlight outside. His phone lit up one last time that night. No words this time, just a picture of their garage with the word "Leave" still faint under layers of scrub paint. He stared at it until his vision blurred, his nails digging crescents into his palms, the taste of blood in his mouth where he bit his tongue to keep from screaming. He felt something break in him then, something fragile and precious that he tried so hard to protect. The last thin line between self-control and violence, the last bit of hope that maybe if he just behaved, if he just kept calm, things would get better. The last bit of faith that this town would ever see him as anything but a threat to be erased. Marcus couldn't sleep for nights after his mother lost her job. He lay on the thin mattress, listening to the creaks of their old apartment, the groan of the pipes, the faint cars outside on the highway. He replayed every moment over and over. The messages, the threats, the look in Lorraine's eyes when she crumpled on the floor and cried. He felt like something in him had finally cracked. He told himself he was done playing nice. When the message came, "Meet us at the pool tonight. Talk it out. No more fighting. Let's fix this," he didn't even hesitate. It was so obviously a trap he could taste it. But he went anyway. He didn't even tell Lorraine. He just wrote a note she'd find too late, put on his black hoodie, and slipped out the door into the sticky summer night. The walk to Westvale Community Pool felt longer than ever. He kept to the sidewalk, head low, watching the shadows stretch under the streetlights. The pool was closed for the night, locked up tight, but he knew Carter would have a way in. When he got there, the gate was ajar. The smell of chlorine was sharp on the air. The moonlight made the water gleam like black glass. He could hear whispers behind the equipment shed. Marcus exhaled slowly, centering himself like Grandpa taught. He felt the rage simmer under his ribs, but didn't let it boil over yet. He walked onto the deck, sneakers whispering over concrete. "I'm here," he called. His voice was calm, too calm. He heard Carter's voice. "Over here. Let's talk." Owen and Lucas stepped out first. Carter followed slowly, tapping something metal against his palm. Marcus didn't flinch. He saw the pipe in Carter's hand, the chain wrapped around Owen's fist, Lucas with a crowbar tucked under his arm. They weren't even pretending. Carter smiled. "Glad you came, man. Wanted to clear the air." Marcus stayed silent. He watched their feet, their stances, the tension in their shoulders. They were trying to spread out, cut off his exits. He let them think they were in control. Carter kept talking. "See, you embarrassed us. You made us look weak. Can't have that." Owen snickered. Lucas cracked his neck. Marcus said nothing. Carter's smile fell away. "Get him." They rushed him at once. For a second it was chaos. Feet slapping wet concrete. Metal scraping. Marcus's pulse spiked. But he didn't panic. Didn't scream. He moved. Owen's chain swung at his face. Marcus ducked, feeling the breeze as it missed him by inches. He stepped in and grabbed Owen's wrist, twisting sharply. The chain clattered to the ground as Owen howled. Marcus used the momentum to shove Owen sideways into Lucas's knees, sending both sprawling. Carter's pipe came down in an arc. Marcus sidestepped, feeling the wind of it as it slammed into the deck. He grabbed Carter's arm and twisted, the pipe falling with a metallic clang. Carter tried to punch him. Marcus deflected the blow with his forearm, then snapped a precise strike to Carter's chest that sent him staggering back, gasping. Lucas was up, swinging the crowbar. Marcus caught his arm mid-swing, used Lucas's momentum to flip him over his shoulder, the crowbar skittering away. Owen lunged at him from behind. Marcus pivoted, elbows smashing into Owen's ribs. He felt the breath leave the other boy's lungs in a ragged wheeze. Carter was panting now, eyes wild, scrabbling for the fallen pipe. Marcus kicked it away and advanced. Carter threw a sloppy punch that Marcus caught, twisting until Carter dropped to his knees with a pained scream. Marcus didn't finish him. He let go. Carter fell back, whimpering. The fight was over. All three of them were moaning, clutching ribs or limbs, eyes wide with shock and terror. Marcus stood in the moonlight, chest heaving. He didn't speak. He didn't gloat. He just stared at them. Then he turned and walked away. But he wasn't alone. From behind the fence, hushed voices whispered. Phones had been out the whole time. Screens glowed in the dark. Teenagers Marcus didn't even know had watched everything, recorded everything. Multiple angles. The chain, the pipe, the crowbar, the ambush, the self-defense. As he left, he heard one voice mutter, "Holy crap, he's not the monster they said." Marcus didn't say a word. He walked home alone under the stars, sneakers silent on the sidewalk, heart still pounding, but not with fear. The next morning, it was everywhere. He woke to Lorraine shaking him, tears on her face again, but these were different. She held out her phone. The video played in her trembling hands. Marcus saw himself on screen, silent and deadly, controlling the fight with clinical precision. He saw Carter's pipe swing and miss. He saw Lucas's crowbar fly away. He saw Owen's chain fall uselessly. The captions on the reposts told the story clear as day. He didn't start it. They ambushed him. He could have killed them. He didn't. The views were already climbing into the hundreds of thousands. Comments poured in. "This is not what we were told. They tried to set him up. He's trained." Some people were angry at him, but far more were furious at the lie. Local news picked it up that afternoon. By evening it was on national accounts. Lorraine watched the clips on repeat, hand over her mouth. "You didn't tell me," she whispered. Marcus shrugged weakly. "Didn't want you to worry." She cried harder, hugging him so tight he thought his ribs would crack. Later that day, there was a knock on the door. Marcus tensed until he saw who it was. Franklin Hayes. The old man stood with his cap in his hands, looking older than ever, but solid as a rock. Marcus let him in. Lorraine wiped her eyes and offered him coffee. He refused. He sat heavily at their kitchen table and fixed Marcus with a steady gaze. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said finally. Marcus blinked. "You knew him?" Franklin nodded. "More than knew. We served together, taught martial arts to kids who needed it, fought in places you don't want to hear about. Your granddad saved my life in '72. Marcus felt his throat close up. Lorraine sniffed. Franklin's voice dropped lower. "That style you used? That was his. Direct, controlled, designed to end fights fast without killing a man if you didn't have to." Marcus swallowed hard. Franklin kept talking. "You didn't lose control. That's what he always preached. You chose not to break them, even when you could." Lorraine was openly crying now. Franklin looked at her, voice softer. "Ma'am, you raised a good man. Don't let this town convince you otherwise." He pulled a worn photo from his wallet. Two young men in battered uniforms, arms slung over each other's shoulders, dust and sweat on their faces. "That's me and him," Franklin said quietly. "He'd have wanted me to look out for you." Marcus took the photo carefully, fingers trembling. He felt something shift in his chest. Not gone, not fixed, but lighter. For the first time in weeks, he let himself hope. Marcus woke up the next morning to the smell of burnt coffee and the frantic tapping of his mother's fingers against the chipped Formica counter. Lorraine wasn't crying this time. Her eyes were wide, feverish with energy he hadn't seen in weeks. "It's everywhere," she breathed, shoving her phone at him. Marcus blinked blearily, heart still heavy from Franklin's visit the night before, but when he saw the screen, the sleep fell from his eyes instantly. The video wasn't just one angle anymore. It was a compilation, edited but raw. Multiple teens from the shadows had uploaded their clips. Some had even pieced them together into a single timeline. It didn't just show Marcus defending himself. It showed everything. Carter's mocking voice inviting him to talk. Owen's chain glinting in the moonlight. Lucas hefting a crowbar. The three circling him like predators. Then the attack. Carter lunging with the pipe. Owen swinging the chain with murderous intent. Lucas roaring with that heavy bar. Marcus's defensive moves were precise, controlled, but the fear was real, the threat obvious. One clip even caught the aftermath clearly. Carter on his knees, pipe knocked away, Marcus standing over him but refusing to finish it. The video froze on that moment. Marcus's face was exhausted, strained, eyes dark with something complicated, anger, grief, but also control. He wasn't a thug. He was surviving. Lorraine scrolled through the comments with a shaking thumb. There were thousands already. This town tried to ruin him. He showed more restraint than I would. They wanted him dead. The police chief's son led an armed ambush, and they called him violent. The hashtag Justice for Marcus was trending by noon. By dinner, national news had picked it up. Reporters knocked on their door, mics in hand, asking for interviews. Lorraine refused most of them, but they couldn't keep them away from the front yard. Marcus sat in his room, listening to the murmur of voices outside, blinds drawn. He felt hollow, not vindicated yet, just raw, like an open wound everyone wanted to poke at. But the dam had broken. The next day, the full, uncut video went viral. Not just the pool fight, but footage someone had held back until now. A different night, weeks earlier, when Marcus had been forced underwater by Carter's crew. Their cruel laughter. Marcus thrashing, gasping. Mason's hand on his head. Owen shouting slurs. The lifeguard's whistle shrieking too late. Marcus had never even seen that footage before. He felt sick watching it. Lorraine cried, fingers over her mouth. She tried to hug him, but he pulled away gently. He couldn't stand to be touched while it played. That was what they tried to kill him for. That was what they tried to bury. By evening, the local news was forced to cover it. The anchor's face was grim as she read the headline. Westvale rocked by video evidence of racially motivated assault. She didn't say alleged. She said it straight. The clip played in the background. Carter's smug grin. Owen's chain. The crowbar. The dunking. The panic voices. Marcus's breath caught at the last part. Franklin's voice was on one of the recordings. Off camera, but clear. "Son, stay calm. Don't let them see you scared." Even from the shadows, that old man had seen everything. Reporters swarmed the Westvale Police Department for comment. Chief Bishop came out once, face pale, jaw tight. "We're investigating," he croaked, before slamming the door on the questions. But it wasn't enough, because by the next morning, the FBI showed up. Marcus and Lorraine sat at the kitchen table clutching cheap mugs of coffee as black SUVs rolled down Main Street. Agents in windbreakers walked up the steps of the police station. They didn't knock. They entered with a warrant. Social media went berserk. News vans parked outside the station all day. Residents gathered in small clusters, whispering, filming on their phones. No one could pretend it was a local spat anymore. This was federal now. The FBI press conference was short, icy. "We are investigating civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit hate crimes," the lead agent announced. "We will not tolerate racially motivated violence being covered up by local authorities." He didn't name Bishop directly. He didn't have to. By sunset, Chief William Bishop was on camera resigning, sweat pouring down his temples. Reporters shouted questions. "Did you cover for your son? Did you order officers to ignore evidence?" Bishop wouldn't answer. He just read a trembling statement about spending more time with family and fled the podium. Marcus watched it all on TV, feeling something cold and sour in his stomach. Lorraine wept again, this time with relief. But Marcus couldn't smile. Not yet. It wasn't over. The sheriff's department announced they'd be taking over local policing until the investigation concluded. Parents who had shunned Marcus weeks ago were now posting apologies online. Some showed up in person, fumbling for words. One mother from school held Lorraine's hands and cried, "We didn't know. I'm so sorry." Lorraine tried to accept it, but Marcus saw the way her lips tightened. She didn't trust it yet. Neither did he. At school, it was chaos. Half the students acted like nothing happened. The other half wouldn't stop whispering. Teachers fell over themselves to show sympathy they hadn't before. Even Principal Harris cornered Marcus in the hall, stuttering out an apology. Marcus didn't say anything. He just walked around him. He didn't have forgiveness in him yet. The community started to split. Some demanded justice for Marcus. Others defended Bishop and Carter. Facebook turned into a war zone. Someone graffitied the police station with the word justice in huge letters overnight. Marcus didn't know who. He didn't care. Meanwhile, the videos kept spreading. Celebrities tweeted them. Civil rights groups shared them with hashtags. News outlets replayed the footage over and over. Marcus being shoved underwater, Marcus blocking a chain, disarming a pipe, refusing to kill anyone even when he could. A CNN panel debated it for an hour. Lorraine sat on the couch watching, mouth open, hand at her throat. Marcus sat beside her, silent. He wasn't proud of it. He just wanted it to stop. But it wasn't stopping. It was building. The FBI held another press conference announcing arrests. Lucas was picked up first. Then Owen. Carter went last, let out of his house in cuffs while cameras rolled. He shouted something at the agents. Marcus couldn't hear it over the reporters' screaming questions. Lorraine turned off the TV. "Enough," she whispered, hugging herself. But it was only just starting, because the lead FBI agent ended the press conference with a promise that sent a chill through the whole town. "We will be examining all prior complaints of racial harassment in Westvale going back 20 years. If there was a cover-up, we will find it." The courthouse steps were packed before dawn with reporters clutching microphones, cameras set up on tripods, and townspeople in rumpled jackets craning their necks to see. The big old stone building had never seen such a crowd. The Westvale County Court had once been a sleepy place where traffic tickets got paid and divorces were finalized in hushed embarrassment. Now, national news vans blocked Main Street, their satellite dishes gleaming under the harsh morning sun. Lorraine held Marcus's hand so tightly his fingers went numb. She looked exhausted but unbending, eyes flicking across the crowd with quiet defiance. Marcus wore his best shirt, ironed the night before with trembling hands, collar tight against his throat. He kept his head high even when the murmurs followed him up the courthouse steps. That's the kid. He's the reason they're in trouble. He's the victim. The last one still sounded weird in his ears. He wasn't sure he'd ever get used to it. A bailiff held the heavy oak door for them. Inside, the hallway was packed with people. Some were neighbors they recognized, avoiding their eyes. Others were strangers holding notepads and cameras, talking in urgent whispers about hate crimes and civil rights. Lorraine didn't let go of his hand until they sat in the front row. When they did, Marcus noticed the security guards everywhere. No one wanted trouble today. Then the side door opened with a metallic groan, and the courtroom went dead silent. Carter Bishop walked in first, wrists cuffed in front of him. His eyes were red and puffy, hair disheveled in a way Marcus had never seen before. His lawyer had put him in a suit, but it didn't fit right. He wasn't smirking now. He wasn't saying a word. Owen Myers followed, cuffs gleaming under the fluorescent lights. His mom sat in the back, openly sobbing into a tissue, shaking her head like she couldn't believe any of this was real. Lucas Thompson came last. He tried to look tough, jaw clenched, but his shoulders slumped the moment he saw the crowd. Reporters surged forward, cameras clicking like gunfire. "Do you have anything to say? Do you regret what you did?" The deputies pushed them forward. Marcus watched them walk. He saw the way their knees shook slightly. They avoided looking at him. The judge entered to a hush so complete it felt like the whole town held its breath. She was older, hair pulled tight, eyes sharp as scalpels. "These are serious charges," she intoned once the attorneys finished their opening statements. "You have been indicted on charges of conspiracy to commit a hate crime, aggravated assault, false reporting, and obstruction of justice." Marcus felt Lorraine's fingers dig into his arm. She didn't cry. She just sat stone still, watching. The prosecutor didn't hold back. He played the videos for the court, full screen, speakers blasting every ugly word. Carter's mocking invitation to talk. The pipe, the chain, the crowbar, the cold laughter, the dunking. Marcus's gasps underwater. The way the police had written up as mutual combat even after. Then, the second video. The ambush at the pool at night, weapons gleaming. The trio circling Marcus like hyenas. Marcus's calm, deliberate disarming. His refusal to hurt them once they were down. The defense tried to object, but the judge overruled them sharply. She leaned forward on her bench, voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "These are not the actions of someone defending themselves," she said of the defendants. "These are the actions of cowards who wanted to terrorize and harm another human being." She ordered them to stand. Carter trembled visibly. Owen wiped at tears furiously with his sleeve. Lucas stared at the floor, face blank. The bailiff locked their cuffs tighter as the judge read the verdicts. Guilty on all counts. Lorraine gasped. Marcus closed his eyes for one long second, letting the words sink in. When he opened them, he saw the boys being turned toward the back door of the courtroom, cameras flashing in their faces. Carter's father, former chief bishop, was in the gallery. He didn't say a word. His face was ashen. A reporter shouted a question at him as he tried to leave. "Do you support your son now?" He shoved the camera away. Owen's mother collapsed against the wooden bench, sobbing uncontrollably. Lucas's father shouted at a lawyer, spittle flying, face purple with rage. But it didn't change anything. The sentences were read. Juvenile detention time for the boys, maximum allowed under the hate crime enhancements. Probation conditions that barred them from contacting Marcus or Lorraine for years. Community service, so extensive it would follow them through college. Court-ordered racial bias education programs. And that wasn't the end. The civil suit followed quickly. Lorraine had filed it with the help of Franklin's lawyer friend, who volunteered pro bono. This time, there was no jury, just a judge reading out numbers that made the defendants' families visibly pale. Medical bills for Lorraine's panic attacks, lost wages from her firing, counseling for Marcus, damages for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The judgment was brutal, hundreds of thousands. Owen's family tried to negotiate it down. The judge refused. Carter's father had to sell his vacation property first, then their boat. Lucas's family sold their landscaping business outright. Marcus read about it in the paper, though Lorraine wouldn't let him keep the clippings. She didn't want it in the house. He heard the whispers in town. People who had always supported the Bishops and the Myerses and the Thompsons suddenly didn't want to talk about them. No one wanted to be associated with them. Their kids changed schools, moved in with relatives. The Bishop house went on the market for way below value. For sale signs sprouted like weeds across the lawns of people who'd once spat on Marcus's name. The mayor gave a public statement about restoring trust and healing old wounds, though no one quite knew how. Lorraine wouldn't let Marcus skip the hearing where the damages were finalized. She sat straight back next to him, her hand resting firm and warm on his forearm. When the judge banged the gavel for the last time that day, The room erupted in murmurs. Marcus just breathed. Slow, even. His heart was beating so hard it hurt. But for once it wasn't terror or rage, just relief. They walked out the same courthouse doors they'd come through months ago with cameras in their faces. Only now the questions were different. How does it feel to see justice? What would you say to other kids going through this? Marcus didn't answer. He just kept walking. Lorraine held her head high. Reporters asked for interviews. Lawyers pressed cards into their hands. Activists offered hugs. But Marcus didn't slow down until he reached the parking lot, eyes stinging with something that wasn't anger anymore. Lorraine beside him with tears of her own that she didn't bother wiping away. Months after the sentencing, after the civil case had finally closed with checks cut and property sold, the town tried to return to normal, but the scars remained. Marcus walked down Main Street and felt the stare soften, shift from hostility to something else, guilt, embarrassment, sometimes cautious respect. He wasn't sure what to do with it. He'd see the for sale signs in yards of families who once spat at him and his mother and feel nothing. Or maybe too much to name. Lorraine insisted on buying groceries in town now, head high, voice firm. She still worked 2 jobs, but they didn't live in that creaky apartment anymore. The settlement let them move into a modest 2-bedroom with a clean white porch and a yard big enough for a dog she adopted without asking him first. Marcus didn't mind. He took the dog for long walks at dusk when the air cooled and the sky went red and gold. He was still figuring out what to do with himself. He took online classes. He volunteered at the youth center. He trained every morning in the cramped garage Mr. Hayes helped him convert into a makeshift dojo. Franklin sitting on a stool with a mug of coffee and barking corrections at him with that unkillable Marine's growl. Then came the day the letter arrived. Lorraine found it in the mailbox, handed it to him with a wary look. Marcus read it twice before saying anything. The county's mediation office wanted him to attend a final, optional reconciliation meeting. Carter Bishop had requested it. Lorraine watched his face carefully. "You don't have to go," she said quietly. Marcus didn't answer right away. That night he lay in bed, dog curled against his side, ceiling fan whirring in slow hypnotic arcs. He heard the echoes of Carter's voice screaming slurs. He saw the pipe, the chain, the crowbar. He felt the cold water pressing him down. But he also heard Carter's voice cracking in court when the verdict was read. Saw his father burying his face in his hands. The world had turned upside down, but nothing had felt settled. The next morning Marcus told Lorraine he'd go. The meeting was in a small, neutral office downtown with cheap chairs and a folding table. A counselor sat between them, hands folded, voice calm, explaining the rules. Carter looked older somehow. He'd put on weight. His hair was shorter, neater. He didn't wear a suit this time, just a wrinkled collared shirt that looked like he'd slept in it. He wouldn't meet Marcus's eyes at first. He mumbled, fumbled with his hands. Marcus watched him carefully. He didn't say anything to help. He wasn't here to make it easier. Finally, Carter drew in a shuddering breath. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked on it. He blinked rapidly, jaw trembling. I didn't think it would go that far. I thought it was just messing with you. I didn't want," he broke off, covering his eyes. The counselor asked him to breathe. Carter lowered his hands. His eyes were bloodshot. "I'm sorry, Marcus. I swear to God. I'm sorry. I know it's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I had to say it." Marcus sat in silence. The old him would have screamed. Or worse. He thought about Franklin telling him real strength was control. He thought about his grandfather's words about dignity. He thought about Lorraine scrubbing graffiti off their door with tears running down her face. "It's not enough," Marcus said evenly. Carter flinched like he'd been struck. Marcus kept going. "But it's a start." Carter let out a sob he tried to muffle. The counselor gently ended the session after that. They stood awkwardly by the door. Marcus didn't offer to shake his hand. Carter didn't try. But as he left, Carter whispered one last thing. "I'm going to try to be better." Marcus didn't say anything. He just nodded once. And that was it. Years passed. The town changed in small ways. The pool got a new sign with an anti-discrimination policy written right on it. The police station had new leadership, mandatory bias training, oversight committees with Franklin on them. Lorraine got promoted to manager at the diner. She still worked too hard, but she smiled more now, teased Marcus about finding a girlfriend, threatened to adopt another dog. Marcus started teaching martial arts at the community center. Not fancy, no belts, just self-defense, control, discipline. Franklin sat in on every class at first, grumbling about lazy footwork, until the kids started laughing at him. Word spread. Enrollment grew. He taught kids of every color, every background. Kids who had been scared like he'd been. Kids who needed to know how to defend themselves without losing themselves. One night after class, Marcus was sweeping the mats when the door opened quietly. Owen Myers stepped in first, older, taller, wearing a faded volunteer shirt from the county's anti-racism initiative. He didn't talk much, just raised a hand in greeting. Behind him came Lucas Thompson, similarly changed, more serious than Marcus remembered, carrying a box of flyers for the program they'd started helping run. They weren't friends. Not yet. Maybe never. But they worked with him. They helped organize workshops, went to schools, and talked to kids about why hate spreads so easily. Marcus watched them one evening, standing in front of a room full of middle schoolers, explaining how easy it was to go along with cruelty if you didn't question it. Lucas's voice actually shook. Owen put a hand on his shoulder to steady him. Marcus felt something in his chest ease. He didn't forgive them completely. He didn't forget. But he saw the work. He saw the effort. And he let them try. Later that night, he sat outside the center with Franklin. The old man sipped his coffee, grunted. "You did good, son." Marcus didn't answer at first. He watched the streetlights glow against the quiet sidewalk, the kids laughing as they left. He felt the cool breeze on his face. Finally, he just said, "We're not done yet." Franklin nodded, the lines in his face deepening with something like pride. That's the point. And in that moment, Marcus understood it wasn't about winning or revenge. It was about making sure no one else had to fight the same battle alone. It was about breaking the cycle. He closed his eyes and breathed deep, feeling the weight lift a little more with every exhale. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And which part of the story surprised you the most? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it.